Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here with us. Thank you for taking the time to listen to us. I'd like to thank Pablo, Fernando, and Lionel for being here with us as well. I just wanted to welcome all of you, and I will now give the floor to Lionel, who will start discussing this project and these initiatives. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Can you all hear me well? Well, to set the context about what we have been doing together with Aapresid, I will tell you what we have been working on with Pablo and Nature Conservancy. We have a shared vision that is transforming regeneration into economic value for agriculture. By regeneration, we mean the recovery of ecosystems, recovery of soils, so that this can be added value for agriculture and an opportunity to move forward with agriculture. We want to restore habitats and ecosystem, capture carbon, increase biodiversity. We want to place farmers at the center as a supplier of ecosystemic services. How do we want to do this? By providing economic benefits or incentives to promote regeneration, and the role of the organizations in terms of these goals. The role of Aapresid, Nativas, and Nature Conservancy is to facilitate the tools to promote and add value to that regeneration in agriculture. Based on this shared vision, in March, we started working on this project with Aapresid. We signed an agreement following two protocols: Certified Regenerative Environment, ARC, and Positive Nature, which is another protocol from Nativas. The goal is to add value to regeneration. The two protocols consider different environments. The first one is more focused on crops and Naturaleza Positiva. The second protocol is more focused on natural environments within agricultural and livestock areas, the goal being to promote that regeneration of native and natural habitats within those productive areas. The idea is that these habitats within productive areas play very important roles. This is why we wanted to work on these two protocols and add them to the Aapresid certification program. I will discuss this briefly, and then we will tell you what we are concretely doing at different sites and projects. Aapresid has an area which is a certification area or department. We work on sustainability programs or initiatives. We provide the certification that has existed for 15 years, which is called Certified Regeneration. It's a robust protocol with 80 indicators that internally led to the creation of certified regenerative environment. Certified regenerative environment intends to encourage farmers interested in measuring some indicators to follow this protocol. These are indicators related to sustainability, and we want those farmers to get into this world. as part of what we create internally, as part of our work, we started to identify beyond simple initiatives some indicators that are demanded by farmers. We're trying to work closer to farmers and meet their needs. And we realize that we won't be able to achieve some progress with several initiatives or projects we were interested in on our own. And we realized that that was the way to follow Aapresid. It's an association of farmers made by farmers, created by farmers, and the focus is placed on the field. But by field, I mean their productive system. I'm not talking about the crops only, but about the productive system. So we realized that we had to partner with companies like Nativas, in this case, to start these projects and partner with companies that may have more expertise in these areas. Within the Regenerative Environment Protocol, we worked on social indicators related to responsible labor relations and responsible relations with the community. We also use environmental indicators. We measure soil organic carbon, water use efficiency. We have a non-conversion module. We work with biodiversity. We measure environmental impact as well as carbon footprint. And as part of the productive practices and indicators we measure, we work with non-removal, cover crops, that is the no-till system, crop rotation, crop diversity rate, and crop intensification rate. Even though we believe that these indicators give us an idea, an overview of the sustainability of a system, we thought that we were missing something, and this is why these protocols with Naturaleza Positiva were considered to be a good opportunity to move forward, work, and maybe escalate as well.
Bueno, como decíamos antes,
as we said earlier, the Naturaleza Positiva protocol supplements the approach of the Aapresid protocol. Nativa belongs to a company that develops regeneration projects in the agriculture and livestock sectors and develops regenerative strategies. We work with farmers, companies along the value chain to integrate nature into companies' business model and in the agricultural model. That is why, among other things, we saw the need of developing an environmental and economic valuation strategy for regenerative practices in order to drive these regenerative practices. In this case, regenerating natural habitats or native habitats and environments in production facilities, because they play a very important environmental role and also from the production standpoint. We realized we needed to develop this tool in order to ascribe value to these ecosystems. The idea is not to go into technical details, but it measures 3 environmental attributes. The protocol is inspired in the European law that was recently enacted. It measures 3 environmental attributes: plant composition, that is the diversity and proportion of native species within the landscape. When speaking of species, we implement forestry projects with native species, afforestation with different types of trees. So the diversity and proportion of native species is an important attribute as part of the protocol. Landscape configuration ecological connectivity and patches within the landscape. This is something that we also prioritize, that is establishing connections with pre-existing native forests and native ecosystems to favor biodiversity and permanence throughout time, because there would be no point if we plant or engage in afforestation later. These attributes will result, as we will discuss later, the issuance of environmental assets in blockchain, which is used to ensure traceability and transparency. These environmental assets are an economic and financial incentive for farmers engaging in these practices as a financial vehicle to encourage activities. We need clear price signals in favor of regeneration. That is why, following an audit process, the environmental assets are issued to channel funding towards regeneration. This is in a snapshot what we wanted to tell you about the protocol. And now Juan Pablo will tell you about one of the projects that we have implemented. I am Pablo López Anido. I am a farmer. I live in the Banderas area in the south of the province of Santiago del Estero. I wanted to show you this picture. This is the landscape. At the center there is Bandera. These are 400,000 hectares of annual crops, mainly soybean, cotton, and corn. If you go in summer, you will only see these annual crops, which with roots not exceeding 1.5 meters deep. As you can see, the area is not intervened by other major towns or cities. They are very small villages. This is just one block of annual crops. It is a flat area with a water table present throughout the area. Salinity and depth varies, but it goes from 2 to 5 meters in depth this year, considering that we haven't had much rainfall for the past 3 years. In years with water excess, there is an increase in salinity. So based on that landscape, which I have just described, we have to ask ourselves, are we producing sustainably? What can we farmers do to determine how sustainable our production is? Today we have the possibility of acting upon every square meter. We may vary sowing density, fertilizer application density. Also, directed application is sometimes used. We have that ability to vary application and see what is the yield per square meter. Also, we may conduct actions at plot level, efficient application, the use of herbicides, pesticides, the definition of varieties within each plot. Also, we may think of production units, rotation, cover crops. This is an area which indeed does have lots of service or cover crops, and these are measures that farmers can take in order to work sustainably. The farmer has decision-making power over that. Of course, within the plot, the farmer will try for each plot, for each square meter in the plot to produce. Not to produce. We are seeking efficiency in a tight economy like ours. So is this approach sufficient to have sustainable production? Each plot, each production unit is sustainable. But does that make all production sustainable? What we have found, or at least what I think, is that degradation parameters arise at a landscape level that cannot be measured at the plot level. These parameters are the sum of what happens in each plot. Say, for example, we cannot say that. I mean, this is a result of doing the same in 400,000 hectares. One thing that comes up is the loss of biodiversity. Also, there is a species that is susceptible to herbicides in the environment, not drift, mind you. So all these trees are dying. There is a severe impact on cultivated and non-cultivated forest. Public trees in Bandera are also dying in October, November, and December, even if we have had fallow, crop, cover crops, wheat, you name it. Herbicides are applied galore, and the sowing date is in December. And we need to maintain those crops by applying different pesticides. Local flooding in heavy rainfall years. Since roots are 1.5 meters deep, there is a regulation system that has been launched. And even though we had a situation last year where there was heavy rainfall in March, we started to harvesting using bulldozers. The people in Banderas have harvesters, but also bulldozers, so that we are prepared to harvest in mud, even though we have experienced little rainfall years. And in the case of cotton, for example, it cannot be planted just anywhere because it can be very much affected by drift. These are the ones that I consider issues that come up as a result of the landscape. We may have very good application, 85% efficiency, if 400,000 hectares we have efficient application and just 15% of product being lost. When we extrapolate that to 400,000 hectares, this is a result of 60,000 hectares that are left in the middle. And if there is a village or town in between, it will receive all of the impact generated by the product. So what can we achieve? Implementing perennial crops, improving biomass production, not applying herbicides in October, November, December, where we find or encounter this problem, and roots beyond 2 meters deep to use the water table, contributing to water table regulation and preventing that the water table will rise and that soils will become more saline. This is what we did with the project last year. In a plot, it's 240 hectares. This is a low productivity area where we engaged in afforestation with 2,000 plants, and there was a native forest. You can see it there in the picture. We connected this section here to the woodland using these trees. Also, for some years now, the native plants are 2,000 with a density of 500 per hectare. Total hectares were 5. The species was Neltuna alba, carob tree, and these plants have been there for a year. Not quite a year, because they were planted in November. Yet other measures that I have implemented over the past year, having these objectives in mind, were as follows. This is carob tree afforestation in 2023. This is the second pruning. This was chipped. The second was chipped. This is a eucalyptus plantation in other environments, integrated with carob tree and native forest, sugarcane, which I mean, this is a test level, but productivity is very high. Even in peri-urban areas, we have vineyards. We are producing wines from vineyards in the peri-urban area in Bandera. This is an example of how we can intervene in the landscape to achieve sustainability without losing profitability. The idea being to allocate part of the area to these type of activities to ensure there will be some regulated landscape, and so that we strike a balance there. Good afternoon. Thanks very much for being here today. I'm Fernando Benitez, agricultural engineer, cattle raiser in the south of Chaco, and I work at the Nature Conservancy, coordinating regenerative agriculture projects in the greater Chaco area. Nature Conservancy is a global organization whose mission is to protect water and land that is essential for life. We have been present for 70 years now in 70 territories and countries, especially in Argentina. We're working in 2 locations, the greater Chaco area and Patagonia. We work on stringent conservation projects, creating natural reserves, private natural reserves, and as well as public natural reserves in those areas that are most important for biodiversity preservation, and also regenerative agriculture and cattle raising projects, several of which are developed in the greater Chaco. And this serves as introduction for the project I'm going to tell you about now. Much of the work we do at Nature Conservancy is done through climate natural solutions, which try to manage, preserve, and restore both native and production environments, the intention being to sequestrate more carbon dioxide and reduce emissions generated by any type of activity. Climate natural solutions are broken down into 3 major categories. One is protecting natural systems. Another one is management of arable crops, crop land and crops, and the other one is restoring land where there are natural systems. A study conducted by TNC in 2017 showed or concluded that 1/3 of cost-effective mitigation required to achieve the 2030 goals, the Millennium Development Goals, to have quality of life, which are summarized by not increasing the global temperature by 2%. 1/3 of that possibility of improvement is in the hands of agricultural production, agricultural land, cattle raising, agriculture, forestry, and other uses of land. That is why we believe that the whole sector is part of the solution. And this is what we have been talking about, and which Pablo showed by giving concrete examples about an area. Farmers can be part of the solution and develop activities within his field that will contribute to this objective. Today, in particular, I wanted to tell you that these solutions have different ways of implementation, which are practical per se, and which you can implement it at your own fields. Many of them you are familiar with already, and surely you have implemented already, such as cover crops, crop rotation, no-till. This is the no-till Congress, nutrient management, agriculture and cattle raising integration, grazing management, and there is a lot to be done in terms of natural regeneration management, as well as the possibility of thinking of using trees in agricultural land in general, that is, trees in production environments. It is based on this that we wanted to share with you a regenerative strategy at a landscape scale, which has been implemented since last year together with Nativas and farmers. This is a program focused on an agricultural area located between Bandera in Santiago del Estero and Tostado in the province of Santa Fe. 60 hectares were forested in 2024 in agricultural facilities. There was one cattle raising facility, and Pablos, which is an agricultural facility. In the first one, in Pablos, this was done on one end. It was a low production area, and in the case of the cattle raising plant, we developed a design throughout the land so that every sector that will be grazed will include trees for shade and to improve production capabilities, in addition to the environmental benefit provided by those trees. What does this landscape regeneration strategy mean? Well, regeneration within agricultural land, improving or generating environmental connections between different natural areas, and the design of interventions that will be integrated into the production activities. Going into further detail, let us share the restoration case, one in particular that was done at a production unit level. It was a farmer's lot. We looked for low productivity or degraded sites, as Pablo said in his presentation. Say, for example, highly saline solutions, compacted soils, or because of their attitude are low productive or floodable. We look for those locations. We work together with farmers. We come to an agreement, and we plant trees for restoration purposes. Trees are used for that end. And at the landscape level, how do we do it? We try to develop biological corridors. These are arranged based on models which have been designed and developed in the region where there is a higher feasibility of establishing an effective connection among the different actions that we take, each intervention. We choose in each plot farmers that, because of their location as part of the landscape, they may contribute to developing an effective corridor. This is what we seek. And through that intervention, we want to have both functional and structural connectivity with remaining woodland patches that may have remained, trees, sets of trees that may have been left after developing the area, and if there are areas that need to be protected, generate these buffer areas through these interventions, and also protect riverbanks, if any. That's how, or different ways in which we do it, and how we determine to implement each intervention in the landscape. Each intervention is intended to contribute to a greater good or to provide greater benefits at a landscape level. And lastly, how do we make this a reality? How do we transform this strategy into a reality? Well, by developing scientific knowledge, looking into how we choose the different actions so that there is scientific justification for each of them. We do so through collaborative networks. It is a major effort with major goals. We know we cannot do it alone, and that is why we seek cooperation with Nativas, with farmers, other institutions, with which we work, also by identifying precursors, people who may want to voluntarily join us in this effort. Once again, farmers play a key role here. And in addition to thinking of his day-to-day activities, farmers start thinking of the system as a whole and how that system drives and promotes an improved landscape. Also, counseling or advice projects in the field, so that through these regeneration projects plus advice on the field, we can contribute to the regeneration going forward and improving, and also feasibility projects to monetize ecosystemic services. Ideally, and this is the intention, the benefit generated by regenerating different environments, that benefit should also be a benefit for farmers to scale up his activities and engage more and more in these activities that we have discussed. Having said that, and after thanking you, because you are part of the solution, I remain open for any questions you may have.
Para cerrar con la última
In order to close the last stages in the project, we've already talked about the theoretical framework, about how to attach value to nature-based solutions presented by both Pablo and Fer, with this perspective of landscape regeneration, synergies with farmers, but finally, to see the result of this protocol, as we've already said, we try to integrate the business model and agriculture. We need economic incentives, benefits for this to happen at a larger scale so that more farmers will promote these regenerative actions. We need those economic incentives, and this is one of the challenges. We have technical challenges, cultural challenges, but the economic incentive is also key for farmers implementing regenerative practices in crop management, by replanting, by conserving natural habitat within their productive areas, will have profitable results. There are environmental assets. After recording the evidence of regenerative actions, what we do is marketing that within the agricultural and cattle breeding chain. Today, we map the value chain, and the main thing is carbon footprint. Companies have to work on environmental demands set by the market, rules, regulations, etc. This is why we want to add value to it within the agricultural and cattle breeding value chain, so that these solutions can be marketed within agricultural companies. This is an in-setting strategy, which means working on carbon footprint within the supply chain. And there are companies that support and promote regenerative strategies to show climate resiliency of their chain, where the raw materials come from. And these are the companies that are promoting these projects and where these environmental assets are marketed. We also want to improve profitability and to provide farmers with economic incentive. And the ultimate goal is to promote continuous improvement in agro-ecosystem qualities in terms of biological diversity increase, as well as its composition and permanence. As I was saying, we believe that this cannot be done separately. No one here can approach these changes that seem to be quite deep but feasible Nobody can do this on their own. Within each system, each landscape, there are specific features, and there are different ways to approach this. And this is also something that we should point out, the possibility to have these initiatives and projects that support these decisions. One of our main lessons learned are the partnerships, these networks. Nobody can work independently, so this is very important. And we also want to provide tools. Aapresid wants to support farmers. Nativa does the same thing. They work with farmers and producers as well as the Nature Conservancy. So we want to support and provide farmers with tools so as to meet these goals. What do we have looking forward? Well, this is our first project. It's a pilot project. We're undergoing the first stages, but this is something open to the community. We hope to find several farmers and producers who are interested in these initiatives. So if there's anyone here who would like to participate, please do not hesitate to get in touch with us. And we have to keep finding key players who can join these types of projects so as to work together and have better responses and more robust solutions. This is it as far as we are concerned. Any other questions, comments, doubts, remarks? Would you like to know anything in particular? I'm sorry, but the speaker is not using the mic. Very good question. One of the goals is to increase biodiversity in productive landscapes. One of the main challenges is the right time to have positive results, what we know biodiversity gain. Sometimes you need years and years of regenerative practices. This is why the Naturaleza Positiva protocol is designed in stages. And the first stages aim at promoting regenerative practices that will ultimately lead to biodiversity increases. This is why we focus on reforestation with native species, ecological communities that will not generate positive results that can be measured in the short term, but they are the necessary conditions for that to happen. That's the reason underlying the design of this project. You also mentioned something about carbon. Do you have any initial measurements, any protocol you use? In time, we will start measuring results. One of those results during the first years, especially during the first year, carbon capture from trees is very little. So as years go by, we will keep measuring it. One of the parameters to be measured is carbon footprint measurement, impact of production on carbon footprint. So we will measure carbon and biodiversity. From a corporate point of view, we see a growth in the number of corporate reports that show the impact of company operations on biodiversity. So these are two things that will be measured eventually. What about tree weeds? I live in the Córdoba area. Woodlands are becoming full of carob tree or siempre verde more in the northern area. Where we are, we cannot use pesticides in the woodlands, so there are not many tools to control that. It's a very difficult and very interesting topic. What we're trying to promote are biologic corridors, particularly in those areas where you do not have cattle breeding operations. But we are not doing anything because first we need to generate the right conditions until the native species develop. But we try to generate the initial corridor and without any additional interventions that takes a long time and also a lot of labor. For example, if you require irrigation, then the cost may be extremely high. In those areas where there is already on-site production, in those areas we try to control exotic species, and we try to do it through interventions. In this place where there were plantations for cattle breeding and where we want to promote grasslands so that it will still be profitable for the company's operations, we're trying to change our management, and we always want to go towards native forest. This is why we plant 1, 2, or 3 native species while we manage the exotic species, but it depends on the land use. And we try to do this through management practices that are related to the use, to land use in that specific plot. But in those places where we carried out this regeneration strategy, we have not yet seen these weeds. I guess this may happen in cattle breeding plots or in plots that have been there for longer times with cattle breeding operations. Good afternoon. This is a more commercial question. Those farmers who carry out this strategy, will they eventually get economic compensation, or do they do it from more based on philosophical principles? Because if we want to convince other farmers, one of the first questions they will ask will be this one. From the commercial or economic point of view, as I've already said, one of the main goals of Nativa is to generate economic benefits for farmers who do this. This is why the protocol includes measuring certain environmental attributes, ecological connectivity, species diversity, permanence, etc. And based on that, we can issue environmental assets so that companies will get a certain profitability out of investing in these projects. There are companies that are also interested in investing in sustainability in the value chain. Now, we also understand that this is not the only thing, and part of the strategy is to provide other economic benefits such as funding. Today, we're starting to see some funding. we're encouraging this funding to become more important, and we usually call it green funding or climate funding. So we try to generate economic benefits for farmers and producers. From the Certified Regenerative Environment Program, we also have some benefits, the products, the raw material that is produced at those certified establishments today have a differential value through the sale of those credits. 1 ton of that product generates a credit which implies differential bonus for farmers. And within Aapresid, we have what we call benefits club with differential rates, discounts on inputs, differential rates, and we say that if we start adding up all those little economic incentives, and if we add to that cost reduction because of a more efficient management system, if we analyze all of that, we will see that there are attractive benefits for companies to join this project. I'll give you my perspective as a farmer. I think we are very much used to thinking our year on our gross margin. This is not related to that. We're speaking of regenerating value in the field, something that cannot have a price, a cost in the short term. But if you see a forest made up of carved trees in 15 years' time, well, that will have a value that you cannot see today. So it's about having a different vision, because it's not about doing things 1 year because you get incentive this year and getting out of the program because you will not get incentives the next year. You have to be convinced about what you do, and you have to know that you will generate value. Whether it has a price or not, that will depend on many things. That may be more or less. We don't know yet. But this is a long-term project, similar to what we would do in the past. We're not thinking of immediate results. And we know that for farmers of a certain age, well, they know that they will not have the necessary time to do everything. It's not that we will not plant soybean to do this. I think that if we raise awareness, if this is done in only 10 or 15% of the surface area, that will already lead to huge impact. It's not so much what you need to generate stability in the environment. With very small actions, we can achieve huge impact. Well, my question was related to what you have just said, Pablo. You mentioned 400,000 hectares undergoing a difficult situation in terms of pesticides, agrochemicals. Is there awareness about what you've just mentioned, working with native species, mitigating the impact through these kinds of actions? Bandera faces a very peculiar situation because it's 400,000 hectares. There are no alternative production systems. There are no mountains, no rivers, and there are not even towns where you will find an area where agriculture is not present. In October, November, and December, this low relative humidity, large working capacity to plant those hectares in 20 days, this implies quick simultaneous work. So it's a serious problem. Actions are carried out. Last year we had a meeting with all technical people and we said, well, there is a herbicide that we're not going to use because it's very volatile. And by volatile, I mean that there are herbicides that achieve a great impact and then they drift somewhere else. And this is not a direct drifting problem. If you use a water-sensitive car, you will not find anything. These products stay in the air. So it's not that it will burn my neighbor. Even if we achieve 85 or 90% of application efficiency, which is great, there are many people who may not achieve that rate. If we do that, we will generate a problem anyway. So it's very difficult to solve this problem because even if we do things correctly, so we do everything at the same time, we generate a problem at a different level. So I think people are becoming aware. I have another plot with forestation along 2 kilometers. We have managed to have all neighbors agree on this and have 11 kilometers of continuous carob tree corridors. I think people are starting to become aware. If I have 100 or 200 hectares, I can plant 2 hectares of carob trees and nothing will happen. Those trees will usually be planted in low productivity environments. So this is something that will have to happen because the environmental pressure and the pressure from society is huge. This is one alternative. I think it would be great for those trees to be productive one day. They may be pruned and may be used for a new sustainable wood industry. Same thing with eucalyptus. Many people are planting eucalyptus and other species, other perennial species. But annual species are planted only in one time frame. This implies high pressure on inputs and roots that go down to 1.5 meters. We have water 4 meters deep, and we're not taking advantage of that. We need roots that will last longer than 1 year and that will be able to take advantage of the whole water surface, water table. Would the integrated system add value and diversity with profitability? Yes, I'm convinced that they will. We can have alfalfa for export. I think alfalfa might be an alternative. I think that the forest cattle breeding and poultry integration might be an alternative. I've thought about it. I already have eucalyptus. Well, I may have some cattle, some poultry. Integration is good, but cattle breeding is also going towards feedlots. There are lots of feedlots that depend on grains and will not get out of their way to go grazing. But in Banderas, historically, there were lots of dairies, but most of it has been lost. And I work in some fields in Alpina, in the province of Santa Fe. You may see dairies once in a while, and the landscape is totally different. So using a very small percentage of your surface area to do this will generate big changes. The landscape and the environment changes dramatically. We work with farmers who do agriculture and cattle breeding integration, and the situation changes completely. but now the cattle breeding industry is getting better margins, and this encourages you to think of different models. And the cattle breeding model has also evolved a lot, so you can optimize grazing, and we can think of rotation on agricultural plots with cattle for service, cover crops, or have 4, 8, 6, 8 years of that, increase organic matter, increase fertility, and then have agriculture. Again, that would be the ideal goal, and we're considering this as part of the regenerative agriculture projects. Hello. My question is about what the lady said. Today, 60 or 70% of the land is leased. You said that you planted a eucalyptus curtain together with other neighbors who I assume are landowners, and it's related to this. If it's leased land, it's 1 year of harvest. I am familiar with what Nativa does, and I think it's difficult to have people change their minds. I work in nutrition, and it's difficult to get out of urea. There are other nutrients. So my question is, if you have 800,000 hectares, do you think this may go and extend to other neighbors, considering that other neighbors may have leased lands? Right now, my neighbors are all owners, but it's a serious problem. My agriculture is on lease. Most of my agricultural projects are on leased land, but these things, I do them on my own land, of course. I'm going to get into a totally different topic, but even when we talk about lowering withholdings, the greatest profitability is achieved through leasing. Those of us who lease lands get very little out of that. I hope that one day I will be able to produce something with a value such that the landowner will tell me, come and produce this in my piece of land, so that the value will encourage others and will be more important than the land. But today, sometimes I think things, but I don't say that those will be the solutions, because I know that what we are saying here is very difficult. And sometimes I say, I think this is the way to go, but I'm not saying I will go that way, because it's very difficult. But land ownership, the fact that leasing has gone up, profitability goes down, and leasing goes up. And this is deadly. I'm lucky to have 25% of. I'm lucky because 25% of the land I use is my own land, but otherwise it would be very difficult to sustain. Okay, we have to close. I'm starting to see some signs back there. Thank you everyone for being here. Pablo, Fernando, Lionel, especially thank you very much. And this is our closing thought. The future of agriculture and cattle breeding is regenerative. Thank you for being here with us.